Hi everyone. So today I'm going to show you how in a short climate and in a cold winter you can still achieve compost by spring with my hack. I've been doing this for the last several years. Works fantastic every time. In my backyard, to have like a stinky compost bin, my backyard is not big, it's quite small. So I don't have an area to do proper composting with all the bins, but I do want to enrich my little small garden bed over there. And a 5-gallon bucket full of compost in the spring to spread around in the bed is fantastic nutrients for plants. So what I did is got this old 5-gallon bucket, put some holes in there, a few holes here on the side, and there is a couple of little smaller holes near the top, so to prevent like flies and things coming into it. So I am going to bury this bin up to this hole in my garden bed, and then I'm going to show you how to layer it and where I place it and why. All right, everyone, we're by the garden bed, and you can see I have my hoop house here. I am going to be burying it right here in the hoop house because by doing that, I got some kale and some greens and things in there. The heat that's going to come off of this insulates my hoop house, and it is warm until like December. And I also do a little hack I'll show you later, but it keeps it warm in there. The heat helps it to keep warm. So I'm going to bury it in here, and I'll be back in a second. So as you can see, it's buried. I will backfill it with this extra soil. I did find some earthworms, so I just put them in the bottom of the bucket. So in the bottom of the bucket, the holes and the ones on the side helps the worms move in and out of the bucket. They can climb in, they can climb out, and we're going to help them out with the compost because we're going to do an accelerated compost method. If you live in a cold climate like me and don't have a long enough season to be able to compost all your scraps ready for spring, because when it gets cold, the composting and the mechanism that all happens inside the compost, it stalls and stops. So by the time spring comes, you still have hot compost, because when the soil warms up again, it will start, or when the weather warms up again, it will start to compost again. But at that time, you need to put your plants in the ground. So what are you going to do? You can't plant in hot compost because your plants won't survive. So what I'm going to do after much research is an accelerated compost method. I've already done this several seasons and it's worked fantastically. Albeit it's not a lot of compost. It's a 5-gallon bucket worth, but it's fantastic and it works so well. So stay tuned and I'm going to show you how I do it. We're inside, and you know what? Even if you don't live in a cold climate, this will work and it will accelerate your compost. It's a little bit hands-on instead of just tossing stuff in, because you need to create more surface area so it can compost faster. And I'm going to show you how I do that. So what you're going to do is grab yourself a blender, one that you're not going to use. Well, you could use it because we're not putting anything disgusting in here. And just wash it well after each use. But this is a spare blender. You could go to Salvation Army, Goodwill, Value Village, and just get a cheap old blender. You could get, you know, ask your family and friends if they have a blender that they're going to throw away. Post it on your social media, see if anybody has one that they're willing to just toss. A lot of people don't use them anymore. You could use an old food processor as well, but I have this blender specifically for this purpose. Our personal blender is over there. We have a Ninja blender that I use to, you know, for cooking and making smoothies and stuff. This one is only used for this purpose. I don't use it for anything else. And what was I gonna say? And some people might think, well, how about if someone else is gonna use a blender? I'm the only one that uses the blender in the house. Nobody else cooks. My husband doesn't cook. My son knows a little bit of cooking, but he doesn't use a blender. Never has used a blender. So let's get to it. I'm gonna sit so you can see me. So I have a banana peel that I made a smoothie with this morning. I have tons and tons of potato peels. I got some fruit in my fridge that isn't looking the best, and some stuff that doesn't look nice. Instead of throwing it out, I'm going to put it in the compost. So these potatoes peels, I did frozen French fries and frozen potatoes. If you haven't seen that video, I'm gonna link it below. Great way to save money because potatoes are really cheap right now. But that's another video. So in here, I'm gonna throw in my banana peel, some potatoes, onions, so when you have your compost, you kind of want to have a good mix of browns and greens and that sort of thing, which we will, and I'll show you. I'm going to use some of the potato water. You want your compost to be a little bit moist, so go ahead and put a little bit of water in here. Usually you water the compost, but we're not going to need to because we're going to add some water in here. I'm actually going to use the water I boiled my potatoes with just to get this blended. This is what pureed potatoes look like. They turned purple. So you have the pureed potatoes. We have the pureed potatoes here. I think the banana turned to purple. There's the bucket. And I put the sludge in. Now I'm just gonna put a scoop of dirt on top of that, so that way it's layered like a cake. Now, as you layer the soil, scraps, like your greens and your browns and your soil, etc., all the way to the top, the worms that are in your garden bed are going to find their way through the holes, go up in there, turn all of that into compost, worm castings, and all that goodness. And then in the spring, you have wonderful compost that you can put on your bed because we puree it. we made the composition accelerate faster because technically there's so much surface area and it's already basically broken down. You don't have to take a big piece of potato or a big banana peel to break that down. That takes a long time. But when you do it this way, it accelerates the entire process. So I'm not just putting potatoes in there. I got some greens in there that don't look so hot. Cauliflower that doesn't look so hot. So I'm going to use those too. So you might be saying, Marianne, why are you wasting food? Why didn't you eat that food? I didn't pay for this. My brother-in-law is a vendor for fruits and vegetables. And sometimes when it goes, they have vegetables that they can't, like the vendors can't sell. So it goes through the Ontario Food Terminal. And sometimes vendors have stuff that are not well, like at the end of the week. So a lot of them just give it to him for free because you can't resell this. So this is perfect for me because I got free stuff for my compost. There we go. Let's put some more in. Now the surface area of this is going to make it so much easier for the worms to eat and digest, for the microbes to break down even further. I'm just helping them along with the process. Going back inside for another batch. I'm going to put a list here of what's considered browns and greens. Normally, if you had a regular compost bin with whole scraps, you would need to kind of wet it down and keep it moist. But because we add a little bit of water to each batch, we don't need to do that. What can you use for browns? We know greens are kitchen scraps, but what about browns? Shredded cardboard? Perfect. Worms love this. Bon appetit, wormies! You may be asking, where else can you get browns? Got one of these? One of these? It's fall. It's everywhere. I'm sure your neighbors will be happy if you're raking their leaves. We all recognize this guy. Well, this is a brown too. So now that it's full, I'm just gonna put a lid on it. All right, now that we're back inside and our compost is over there and it is put to bed, it's gonna work its magic. The worms are gonna do their thing. And in the spring, by the time it's ready to plant in June, the first week of June for my location, it's gonna be beautifully composted and it's not gonna stink or anything. It's gonna smell like fresh soil. So in the spring, before we get planting, I will show you what that looks like. But for now, I want to thank you very much for spending time with me today and allowing me to show you how I'm just using things around my home to enrich my soil without having to buy compost and have, you know, elaborate bins in my backyard where you have to turn it and all that. And it's got to stay for, you know, a good year before you can use it. This is just a way that can accelerate your composting, and it's worked wonders for me because it's already broken down. You've already done a lot of the work ahead of time. So it makes the worms and the microbes happy because they can just get to it. So thank you again, friends. Thank you for joining with me. I'll see you in the next video. Take care. Bye. Mwah.